Hi everyone. So this is part one of our collisions tutorials. You can see currently I'm on lesson 6 collisions. Now collisions are a little tricky to work with, and I'll just show you at the moment where collisions are occurring, or not occurring for that matter. Currently you can see that the snowman, the collisions are definitely not working there. We've also got it so that our snowball, once it hits the ground, is just disappearing. And when it hits the hut, if I actually go into the hut itself, you'll notice that the snowball actually still exists. I don't know if you saw that there, but it still exists inside the hut. So we have a number of collisions that we need to work out in our game. And I thought for our first tutorial that we'd actually start quite small. So let's start with the snowball first. We want to make it so the snowball, if it hits the ground, doesn't automatically disappear. And to do that, we can use the entities intersect function. So this is the fundamental part of collisions, is that every entity has an intersects function. And notice that I've got this inside the update function. So the update function of my entity is being called every frame, and it's going to test to see if there was an intersection. I'm going to test to see if the entity that it intersected with is actually the ground. And if it is the ground, then I'm going to turn off any type of collision anymore, because I don't want it to actually, I don't want it to detect any more collisions. So I can turn off collisions simply by doing that. I'm also going to set the speed of the snowball to 0, so it's no longer going to move anymore. I'm going to put on self.ignore. Now self.ignore basically says to the game engine, no longer run my update function. So when its ignore is equal to true, the entity essentially is a dead entity. It's no longer going to process any input. I'm going to move the entity to just a little bit above the ground. So I'm going to set it to kind of be sunk into the ground, but not too much. And then I'm going to make it so that it stays on the ground for about 5 seconds before it's destroyed. So I'm going to use the invoke function, and I've given a delay of 5. I've created a function down here that will destroy the snowball. And what should happen is in 5 seconds, the snowball will disappear. The other thing I'm going to do is I want to make it so that if the snowball hits anything else, other than a snowman, and the ground, it's actually just going to simply be destroyed. Now, in terms of hitting a snowman, I'm going to put that collision code inside the snowman itself. And one of the interesting things you're going to have to consider is, or the important things you need to consider is, where do you want the collision code to reside? Obviously, if two entities collide with each other, both entities could actually run collision code. But it's a pretty messy way to do things, especially if the two entities themselves do things that might not fit with what the other one is doing. So I've made the very conscious choice that for my snowball, I'm going to keep it quite simple, but my snowman, on the other hand, is actually going to handle a collision with the snowball. So that's my code as is at the moment. I'm going to run it just to show you what happens. And pay close attention that when the snowball hits the ground, it should stay above the ground before disappearing. And when the snowball hits a hut, it will no longer go straight through the hut. It's just going to be destroying on impact. So here, I'm just going to, oh, that's no good. Interesting. So we have an error here. This is where I like to actually put a try command around my collision code. Mainly because sometimes, every so often, you get an error when it comes to collision where things say, okay, it no longer exists. So I'm actually just going to put a try thing there, but the error that I'm getting is saying the entity does not equal snowman. So for the moment, I might actually just block that out. And then we'll see how we go. But yeah, I like to put collision code inside a try block. What that means is that Python will run the code, but if there was a fatal error, it's not going to terminate our game. So I do this a lot with my collision code. I'm not sure it's good programming practice or not. Really, I should know why the error is occurring, but because collisions are occurring during frames, sometimes the game can end. And I'm just gonna shoot to the ground. You see the snowball is now hitting the ground. Before 5 seconds, it disappears. Likewise, if I hit the hut and I go into the hut, okay, for some reason the snowball still appears. So that's the bit of code that I need to fix up. And because I put this here, it had a bit of an issue. So if the hit entity's name, that's the name of the object, does not equal snowman, destroy itself. So that should have worked. I'm not quite sure why it didn't. So we'll do that again. But like I said, the try block often fixes the problem. All right, there you go. It is working, and if I go into the hut this time, it should actually be destroyed. Yeah, so there's no snowballs entering the hut anymore. Likewise, it hits there, yep. But if it hits the snowman, you can see it's gone straight through the snowman. So it's actually ignoring the snowman and going straight through it, which is what I want at the moment. So my collisions are now working. Okay, so that's the end of the first part of the tutorials. I'll see you in the next part. Thank you very much for listening.